Let's go ahead and get into the championship where Charleston takes on Louisville City, and Louisville City comes out on top. But if I'm being really honest here, I feel like the last goal does not do Charleston justice because I don't know if 2-1 is a fully deserved result for Louisville. Not to say that Louisville was bad, but it felt like both teams were just really even head to head the entire time.
I tend to lean the way that Louisville was the better of the two sides. Obviously, the red card kind of throws a wrench in things, but for so much of this match, I was impressed with the defensive approach. You think about Lou City and you think about a team that's very aggressive in the press, and you certainly saw that, especially in the counter press when you got Goodrum and Jansen Wilson and Taylor Davila involved towards the right side. That was great. But facing off against Charleston Build, Lou City was almost happy to just let Aaron Malloy get his touches, and they were focused on shape and denying him the ability to pass upfield. They were very narrow, very compact, not only in terms of the front line, but from back line to front line, giving up very little space in the midfield. And Charleston didn't have a good response to that for a majority of the game. When Ben Pierman started to let Juan Torres do his thing, kind of roaming centrally, getting touches in the number 10 kind of space in complement to Emilio Icaza, you started to see Charleston get sharper. But Lou City got what they always get with the Ray Serrano goal. Very physical. You're focusing on winning the ball back in dangerous areas. I love the approach from the jump, as I just explained. Obviously, these teams are going to be dead even every time they play. This feels like if they played 10 times, they'd split 5-5. Feels like a just result given all of the context.
I do love that the quality of the top of the Eastern Conference is such that like this very, very talented Lou City side in Charleston feels like they need to sit back a little bit and make sure that they play structured and organized and can't go play like high flying football, because I think what Ben Pierman maybe set out or maybe said by like playing this particular lineup is I think Aaron Malloy and Husu can beat you in midfield, like can beat Zach Duncan and Taylor Davila in midfield, which is crazy, like an amazing battle. And Danny Cruz was like, I'm not going to play that game, essentially. Like, we're going to play an entirely different game and let you kind of crash against us. And we're going to then hit you on the break. And they just showed, I think, like, one, it showed the level of ability that is in at the top of the East. Like, these teams are just very, very talented and good. But it also showed the little bit of tactical, like the chess match that was being played here by these coaches. And I think on balance, Danny Cruz like wins this round of Pierman Cruz. Will it, be similar when Charleston visits Louisville? We'll see. All in all, I do think the red card was harsh. So I think overall, like that was harsh on Charleston, and it was especially cruel that it is essentially like a goalkeeping error that is the last, that allows the last goal. Given that wasn't really like how the match had gone up to that point, it was very, very cleanly played. But I won't begrudge Louisville coming away with all 3 points, because I do think that they played a very, very good game and executed a strong game plan.
Yeah, and even prior to the red card, you still had Louisville out shooting Charleston 4-2 in terms of shots on target for this one. This was actually Louisville's first time that they actually got a win in Charleston since August 2019. So it will be interesting to see how this series, which has typically been dominated by the home team in years past, how it returns back when Charleston visits Louisville in August of later this season.
Phil, you kind of mentioned it. Ben Pierman said, our holding midfields, arguably the best holding midfield duo in the league. I would, and I guess I'm biased. I don't get into the weeds that much, but I think they could outplay a lot of MLS teams holding midfield duos. I mean, Malloy and Husu is just that good. Maybe I'm totally off kilter here, and I understand that Ben Pierman has a style, but I am so accustomed to a Ben Pierman team being a chameleon and transforming themselves into whatever you're bad at. Like, they are so good at just tinkering and just being whatever you're not good at. That this kind of felt like the first time in a long time that Ben Pierman kind of pressed an issue. Like, kind of just kept pressing it. And I don't want to say that he got totally outmanaged. That's not what I'm saying. But I can't remember the last time that I can sit there and say Ben Pierman was not the better manager on the night. Was it close? Absolutely. I thought it was neck and neck, but it doesn't happen very much, which I do think more speaks volumes to where Danny Cruz is and not where Ben Pierman is.
I thought it was interesting that Pierman went with the halftime changes, like bringing on Douglas Martinez, bringing on Nate Dos Santos at left back. Certainly Dos Santos, I think, added a little bit of extra verve that was needed in comparison to Chris Allen, and that helped Charleston's cause throughout the back half of the game. I don't know if I would necessarily go as far to say one manager outdid the other. You're valid to think so, Kaylor, but this felt like a match where Husu was very much figuring out his positioning, didn't have the clear chemistry. There's a reason that Martinez and Klein split minutes. Like, they're getting used to the battery system. It's almost a mulligan managerially for me, frankly, because of those extenuating circumstances in the Low Country.
And there was a moment early on where I'm fairly certain it was Malloy plays a through ball towards Cal Jennings that, like, Cal is very unlucky. It gets kind of caught under his feet. And it's one of those, like, rhythm things that, again, like, as that's figured out, the idea of Aaron Malloy being able to feed passes in to Cal Jennings is an extremely scary prospect for the rest of the league, I would say. So they were a bit of luck, probably, you know, away from creating a very, very big chance early on with Cal Jennings, and that obviously would change the shape of the game at that point. So who knows? But yeah, overall, I think, you know, Louisville just about got it right, and they got the bounce at the end as well.
Yeah, and if you're Charleston, this match is early enough in the season that you can not forget the result entirely, but you can write it off as just the red card was the red card and move on to the next match ahead, which you have no time to rest because Rhode Island comes to town.
And we will predict that at the very end. Last kind of thing on this, and it is on the Louisville City side. There's just something really, I guess, just kind of nice to see with this team where they are playing old faces of the USL and a lot of new guys. Like, despite only being like, what, 22, Ray Serrano's been around for 7 years. Philip Goodrum has been around for 5 years at this point. Arturo Ordonez feels like he's been around forever. Tosh has been around forever. Kyle Adams has been around forever. If I'm looking between the starting 11, really Zach Duncan is the newest face here, and he really established himself last year. You see Adrian Perez, who, again, feels like he's been around forever. Sam Gleadle is a super sub for them, which feels insane to me for what Sam Gleadle is. Kevon Lambert, sorry, is, again, been around forever. That the fact that this is a team that is not just playing the old hits, but are playing established players that we have grown to know their game inside and out. I just think that's so cool. I just think it is so cool. So, any final thoughts on this match? No. All right. Well, let's go down to our championship tactics show. And we are going to get into a little bit of switchbacks El Paso.
Wants to recreate last year's title form, they'll need to figure out a way to recreate Ronaldo Damas's scoring. We saw a chance at doing so this weekend with the fluidity of their midfield. 4 attacking-minded midfielders hovered around the hub that is Juan Tejada as a hold-up striker and really showed how the switchbacks can evolve in the 2025 season. Here you're seeing Tejada grinding in the right half space, getting touches, and making sure that those midfielders have the availability to push ahead and create chances in behind. Here it's Marco Micheletto, ostensibly a center midfielder, making that key run into the seam to replace Tejada as he holds up play. Ultimately, the result is going to be a penalty for Colorado Springs. evidence of how this team can grow in the new season.
We're going to, of course, start with our residential El Paso guy, which is Phil, which I have 2 questions for you on this. 2 minutes in, Marco Micheletto scores on you. How close were you to a crash out? 2, this team looks a lot better than the team that we were not getting updates about in preseason. They look good.
Yeah, I think I was definitely close to a crash out because I was like, there's no way that the one thing that we said, hey, switchbacks are gonna definitely try to exploit, got exploited in 30 seconds. That they figured it out immediately. That was the one. So it definitely had me close. What I would say is I was trying to work out just how much of this was switchbacks getting the goal and sitting off versus switchbacks not really knowing what to do. I thought it was more of the former than the latter. It felt like for long stretches of the first half, they were essentially declining to play in favor of just giving El Paso the ball. That being said, after my initial frustration was wearing off, Locomotive's attacking patterns do make a lot more sense than they did last year, and I can at least see the semblance of a plan of how the ball is meant to get into the net. I think where it, and this is where I'll plug at USL Stat on Blue Sky, because all of those analytics that you're used to seeing in, I think people have seen in maybe different accounts and stuff like that. Over on Blue Sky, he provides a bunch of graphics and all this stuff. It's really great. So the pass map of El Paso shows to me what they still need to figure out, which is Amando Moreno knows exactly what he needs to do. And that link up with him and Ricky Ruiz and Frank DeRoma as the outlet in midfield, that all made a lot of sense and it all looked very good. But once you started talking about Beto Avila and Tumi Moshibane and how they were meant to link up on the right side of things with Quezada, it didn't make as much sense, and almost none of the attack went through that side. And it was because their average positions were straight up on top of each other. And so there is some figuring out that needs to be done on the right side. But I mean, you can do a lot worse than having Amando Moreno as a focal point. Ricky Ruiz was very active down the left, and I thought had a very good game. And Frank DeRoma was unbelievable. He was fantastic. He was a lot of the reason. Robert Coronado, I think, was a steady presence for Locomotive towards the end of last season, but DeRoma has that capability to receive the ball with his back to goal, turn people, bring other players into the game, and his ability to run. He actually got pointed out by the referee and got several switchbacks players booked because they had keyed on DeRoma as their press trigger, and they were just kicking him the second he got the ball. And the referee actually, this is credit to the referee because he actually noticed this and pointed out that the next guy who fouls him, rather than oh, you fouled a bunch of people, but it's this guy's getting fouled so much that the next guy who fouls him is going to get booked. And so that actually, he was pivotal to what they were doing on the night. All that being said, Locomotive improved for sure. I think the frailty is still there from sort of what they struggled with at times last season. But I think the structure and what I saw over the course of 90 minutes was definitely encouraging compared to most of last season.
100% on the El Paso side of things. I was impressed with the relationship DeRoma and Coronado had in the press as well. DeRoma really getting in people's faces, tracking quite tightly, limiting what Colorado Springs could do as they tried to build forward. And this shape-wise for Colorado Springs, Zach Zandy was playing the 6, Micheletto and Anthony Fontana were kind of these dual yields, number 10s in the middle, but neither felt like they could get going outside of that one sequence 30 seconds into the match, which is a testament to El Paso, who would not have been that solid at this point last season. And again, Ruiz and Amando Moreno really killing it. I think the use of Beto Avila as a little bit more of a hold-up centric forward is good. Not if Toomey is the guy next to him on the right. So something to figure out there, maybe Andy Cabrera. But yeah, good stuff. I think Colorado Springs learned a lesson about how to see out a game. Early in the season, you don't have Speedy Williams this time around. Akeem Ward is getting used to the right side again. A lot of factors combining for them that just didn't pan out. Ultimately, though, I think I feel good about both of these teams leaving this match.
Yeah, I mean, El Paso coming away from this match, out shooting the reigning champions at home and getting a result, especially in the manner that they did with the last second equalizer from Wilmer Cabrera Jr. of all players, was just a kind of phenomenal setting for an El Paso team that really had a challenging season last year and really needed this offseason and this opening game, which I had mentioned in one of my previous articles, that this opening period of games is like really crucial for setting the standard for Locomotive moving forward. But yeah, it was an incredibly encouraging performance, and I was thrilled for the last minute equalizer because it meant another prediction had came true.
John, go ahead. Phil.
The last thing I was going to say is that I think for the Colorado Springs side, if Yosuke Hanya was like slightly sharper on the night, they probably could have done more damage. There were a handful of times where he took up really good positions, but either like couldn't get on the ball or like maybe took a loose touch to where the ball got cleared. And there were a handful of times where I'm thinking like, oh, this is big trouble. And then he got booked for diving as well, which was maybe a little bit harsh. I would say because if he had gone down at the initial challenge from Aquay, then he may have actually earned a penalty, but he went down like well after the fact. And unfortunately got the booking. But I think he's going to be really key, or whoever is occupying like those wide positions is going to be so key for Colorado Springs. And if they have an off night where you're only going to have a handful of chances to get on the end of something, like he would just need to be sharper. And I don't think it was exactly his night.
John, I want to kind of bring this up. When you were looking at Colorado Springs versus Rhode Island, and even more in the postseason, you had brought up Juan Tejada as the 10, and that was kind of your big secret weapon for Colorado Springs and why they would win it all. Now he's playing as the 9, and I guess the official name would be a false 9, right? I understand there's a term, but him playing up top, but essentially just being the hold-up guy and just kind of spraying the ball everywhere, him being the guy to hold it up and distribute and essentially be a 10 and letting everybody else kind of just overflood, like just kind of overwhelm their back line, is that enough for Colorado Springs going forward? Or do you think they do need an out-and-out number 9?
I mean, the question right now is, can Justin Dillon be that guy? At this stage, given the way the league has changed, I don't know if the answer to that is yes. Frankly, I don't think Tejada did enough false 9 things. Like, he kind of felt caught between roles for this switchbacks team in a way where if you really just let him commit to that, if you kind of go legitimately strikerless, let Hanya make the runs behind, try to let Levante Johnson stay wider a little bit more, that feels like the best way for this team to play. I don't know, given the mix in the midfield, given the way they want to build out, if that makes a whole lot of sense. The easy answer is go buy a striker, frankly, but we'll see what gives for James Chambers.
Will Kyle Adams do? Or Charlie Adams, sorry. Will that do enough?
I mean, he's a good midfield addition, but we're back to square one with the mix up top for my taste.
Fair enough. Any final thoughts on this match?
Is this championship stuff in general too?
We have one
We'll
last
circle back to
championship
it.
thing, but
Okay, go for it.
Taylor's got one, and then I've got
That's
some.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
okay. So let's go ahead hit the last little bit of championship thing, which is the kind of corner kick breakdown, which I'm going to go ahead pull up right.
Well, 2 for 3 ain't
Nice.
bad on the audio.
Yeah. All right. I'll try to pull it up later. I will see what it can do. In the meantime, you guys do your thing. Bring us some championship stuff on. I'll try to fix this.
Well, Detroit City, I posted a bit about it today, but with the caveat that Miami looked absolutely abysmal, like one of the most disorganized defensive performances I can remember in recent vintage in the USL. Detroit was great. The possession game, the way they worked through Chapman and Pulisic and Cedeno in the midfield, the off-ball movement was stunning, constant interchange across the board. I don't want to get out over my skis with Detroit, but if they keep playing like this, it doesn't matter what defense they're going up against. They had the tempo, they had the instant chemistry, just incredibly impressive stuff on top of a very solid classic Detroit City defensive showing.
All right, I figured it out. So give me just 1 second, Phil. Goodness gracious, maybe not. Here we go. Kaler's Corner Kick Market, where we are going to be breaking down some set piece goals, and Detroit City has some clever design and a simple mistake by Miami that leads to a goal for Detroit City. So let's go ahead and break this down. Let's look at our starting formation. We have 5 players on the back post, where we have 2 in the back, 2 in the front, and 1 player in the middle, kind of creating this box formation. Our 2 players in the back kind of take a little step backwards to create space. And as they begin their run forward, there's a player who's at the top of the box, takes out 2 players. Think about like a mesh concept in American football where it beats man to man. You take out 2 players at once. Now, here's where the mistake is. Miami's player leaves his front post to try to attack this ball. Unfortunately, he misses, which leaves a wide open goal for Michael Bryant to slot it away at the near post, right where that Miami player was sitting. And it leads to a 1-0 lead for Detroit City FC.
1, great job, Kaler.
Yep.
Terrific analysis. 2, I love both of us doing the short form, like this sub-minute YouTube short style, TikTok-y, whatever. Good stuff.
Yeah, I do enjoy it a lot more, just being short and simple. Sometimes I get a little freaked out because I think I talk too much, but it's fine. The biggest thing I have to say about the corner kick routine that they did, the amount of times I had to listen to the Miami announcer say, there is no X's and O's, just willpower by Michael Bryant to get in front of his man, I was going to absolutely lose my mind. If you go back and watch it, he says there's no X's and O's here. I was just like, oh, yes, there is. Yes, there is. It's just harder to see because it happens so fast. I get it. But it's really simple set piece design. I mean, you have 2 runners, and that's it. Everybody else is a pin or a distraction. There's a guy at the back post who is the front left of the front of the box, who all he is doing is just moving side to side and just because they have a guy just facing him the entire time, just being a distraction. 2 guys who are just pinning. One person is just blocking the goalkeeper, making it harder for him to see. And then you have a guy just in the middle of it causing chaos, making 2 guys run into him, leaving Bryant open. And of course, if Miami's player doesn't leave the near post, chances are that ball hits him square in the face and it's cleared away. But that's what set pieces are supposed to do. They're supposed to cause confusion. And Miami, you mentioned it, John, on all fronts looked horrible. That's a ball that he's on the post. He doesn't have to go to the top of the 6-yard box to contest it. That player's already accounted for. He didn't have to do that. And that's the kind of discipline that Miami was lacking all night, and also got him a red card for their troubles.
It's like the GTA San Andreas soft shit. Here we go again.
It was.
I will say, John, I laughed at your the post of the Kaler Corner Kicks Market photo that you put on Blue Sky.
You have no idea. I was looking for the best farmers market stand I could find on the internet.
One USL championship thought I had, if we're going to go away from a bad Miami, was that an ex-Miami person, Antonio Nocerino, got a 1-0 victory for Tampa Bay. I know we had a lot of reservations about Nocerino's appointment in Las Vegas, and it wasn't without its difficulties that you had Tampa Bay with an absolute they pestered the Las Vegas goal for this entire match, but the fact that Las Vegas were to keep the clean sheet and walk away with all 3 points headed into the very big Dennis Sanchez derby this week, it has a little bit of positive feelings from Las Vegas Lights right now, and their kids look great for the season.
My last championship thought is the acronym LADS. This one's for the lads. Loudon always does this shit. Why? Like, Why I feel bad for you, Kaylor, because Loudon starts the season out like starting the season off against Loudon is such a cursed chalice. It's insane. They will not be this good the rest of the year. They played probably the perfect match. They were unbelievable. And I'm like, there's no way that this is what Loudon is. Like, I simply won't believe it.
Abubakar was awesome, by the way. Like, awesome. He was just lightning in a bottle. Legion was also horrible. They get their goal. Jake Roof, love that guy. He's the best. But other than a moment of magic, it was awful. And that's not to take anything away from Loudon, who absolutely forced the mistake. Like, if Legion were allowed to build up to the middle and just have space on the ball in the middle of the park, I do feel like the game goes differently. But you could kind of tell that no one really pressed them centrally like a Coach Ryan does. And it shocked them. And you could tell that an Enzo Martinez was missing. But also, if you're relying on one guy to be your saving grace, especially, I love Enzo. Dude's like 36. You can't rely on him to be around forever unless he's Matt Van Okel, who's just never going to retire. And like, I think that Loudon forced a lot of mistakes and Legion had zero answers for it. It was fascinating. And honestly, I wasn't even mad at the end of it. I was just, again, fascinated by what was going on. It was like, why is this not working? Why are things not kind of meshing together? And it took about 40 minutes for Legion to understand kind of the press that was coming at them from the midfield. And by that point, it was too late. They tried to play out of the back. And when you have a young player, young 16-year-old like Rami Zamuda, he looked amazing on the ball, but there was no one to pass to. There was no one in the midfield dropping in deep to do anything. And then on top of that, De Trejo have going out with concussion protocol. That's not how you want to start the season. But honestly, I was more impressed with how well Loudon played, and they forced Legion to look bad. Don't get me wrong, Legion looked bad, but they forced the issue. It wasn't like they did it on their own accord.
There was no match in week one where it felt like one team didn't have the sauce and the other team had it fully figured out. The Legion gave far too much time to Loudon whenever Loudon was able to possess the ball. And Loudon took advantage to the fullest extent. The ball movement was slick. It was fast and crisp. They were working to Awuwa, working into Abakora up that left side. It felt like what Ryan Martin envisioned when he kept most of this squad together. And you're right to mention the press as well, Kaylor. I thought Loudon was so organized defensively. And yes, the fact that Torres and Hernandez Foster didn't really have the spatial relationship made a difference. But credit to Loudon. Ryan Martin set this team up. They knew where they needed to be. They knew what their triggers were. Great performance from this team that, let's be honest, I think we all had a handful of doubts about. This makes you feel good about Loudon as a legit playoff team this year.
If the season ended today, Loudon would be the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, let the record show.
The people's champ. I mean, there was a part of me that was upset that Legion lost, but also I think is not just a secret at this point. I am just heavily rooting for Loudon at all times. Just heavily rooting for them.
I won't out who said this, but I did get a text during this game of, boy, Kayla's going to have split loyalties with this result. So you're really living this up.
It's true. People's champ.